Hi, I'm Kelly at Book and Paper Arts, and this week's tutorial is going to be how I made this page in my art journal. Now, this is a lot of page. It has mixed media, transparencies, collage, and embellishment. What I'm going to do is show how this page got made layer by layer. If you like journal arts and arts journals, altered books, collage, and whatnot, please subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn on the notifications, and you will have more of them in your life. Now, before we jump into this, I want to say, as always, this may not be the page that you want, or you may not have the elements. You know what? This is just to give you ideas. Use what you've got. Use what images you have. If you don't have the materials that I'm using here, use some other materials. Improvise. No excuses. Now let's go. This is my art journal, and it's really a kind of a different way of working for me because normally I overplan like crazy. I am the kind of person who has lists for her lists. So when I do a layout in an altered book, I agonize over it. But in my art journal, it was really just this epiphany for me that I could just start putting stuff on the page without thinking about it and playing with stuff and seeing where it leads. And you learn from doing stuff right, and you also learn from making mistakes, but you learn. I do have process videos on a lot of these pages. If you want to look through the feed, you might be able to find those if you want. Today, I am starting with this first layer, which is just some text. Just took it out of one of my old books and glued it down. By the end of this layout, this page, not a whole lot of the text will be seen, but a little bit will peek through. And what this will do is add texture, depth, and interest to the eye for the viewer. The next layer is going to be a little bit of gesso. If you've seen my videos, you know that I am crazy about what I call the peeling wallpaper look, or the peeling fresco, fading fresco look. And that's what this is going to give me. I'm putting it on with a card. I don't want full coverage. I just want to daub it here and there so that it's making, again, some texture to the page. Just giving me something to soften it a little bit. If you don't have gesso, you could use a white or a light colored acrylic, or whatever color you fancy. The next thing I want to do is add some color. So I'm going to come over here and start in this corner. It's going to anchor the page and add some drama. I mixed a kind of a purple black. I used, normally I would probably use acrylic, but you know what? I didn't have acrylic, so I used what I had. In this case, I did have some red acrylic. This is a madder. But for the rest, I used gouache, a blue and a black gouache. I don't even know if you're supposed to mix acrylic and gouache, but you know what? I did, because it's what I had. To put this down, I am going to use, oh, look at this. I also want to show you that I am using a hummus lid as a palette because I'm all about the free art supplies. Okay, so again, I'm going to use a card and I'm going to pick up this color and I'm going to start putting it down. I don't want it to be perfect, perfect, perfect. So I'm just going to go with a kind of a corner here. That'll work. For the next part of this corner, I want to do some stenciling. Now, this is a stencil of some arches, churchy kind of arches, and they are by Tim Holtz. Instead of ink or paint, what I'm going to do to contrast with this dark raisiny color is I'm going to use gesso. Again, you could use a light color acrylic. This paint is still wet, but it's not too flowy. It's pretty viscous in the first place. So I'm gonna, and I do want it to be a little bit tacky for this technique. So I'm gonna line that up there. And I'm using a makeup sponge with a little bit of gesso on it. And I'm gonna start daubing. I don't want perfect coverage. I just want to get in there and again, get that kind of peeling fresco look. See? And that's how that's starting to look. I want to pull it over asymmetrically a little bit, so I'm going to try to line up the arches there, and go over to this corner, add a little bit more. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. And that is what that's going to look like. So just using stenciling gesso onto some damp paint for that effect. The next layer is going to be on the right-hand side of the layout. And I'm going to make it using a printout of this scan from Hardwick's Science Gossip. It was a magazine in the 1880s. Later in this layout, I'm also going to be using a printout of this scan, which is from Ruskin's 7 Lamps of Architecture. If you do not have scans of Hardwick's Science Gossip or Ruskin's 7 Lamps of Architecture, you will have. This coming Sunday, my newsletter for November is coming out, and as every month, it will have scans of vintage paper ephemera. They are high res and they are free. So if you'd like to get those, you can sign up. There's a link in the text below this video. If you don't see it, let me know. This page looks really good printed up on anything, just some copier paper. But today I did something a little different, and I printed it up on some vintage tracing paper. Now, I got that at a car boot sale. I think it was 50p for a gazillion sheets, and I use it all the time. If you buy contemporary tracing paper, it does a beautiful job, and it's way more robust than this. So you can just get tracing paper, and it will go through your printer a treat, and you'll be fine. This, however, is almost like a tissue paper. And you can print on tissue paper. It makes a super cool effect. However, you cannot just feed tissue paper through your printer. Believe me, I know. I found out the hard way. So let's just skip the part where you have to take your printer apart and pull out mangled pieces of tissue paper with tweezers, like somebody did. Instead, what you want to do is take your tissue paper or thin paper and use masking tape to get it down nice and flat on a piece of copier paper. Now, look at this. Here's the masking tape. I'm going to take it off as gently as I can. And you can see that it got printed on in the process. So it almost looks like a washi tape with some old-timey text on it. Don't throw that away. It's a free art supply. Are you crazy? I'm going to put that away somewhere where it won't stick and use it in another project. Now, I took the scan and I just rough tore it asymmetrically, just did it to the eye. Now, you can see that when you glue down a transparency tissue paper or tracing paper, you can actually see it goes semi-transparent and you can see what's underneath. So it's really cool. It adds layer and texture. I am going to use this in some other project. I did think about it. I tried it over here and over here, but it doesn't go. This piece, however, I kind of thought that if I trimmed it, I could pull it over here. Now, you're not going to really see a seam when it's glued down. So this is doing a couple of things for this layout. We've got a strong anchor on this side. Now we have a strong image anchoring this side. So there's some balance. Another thing that it does is, see, this is a diagonal. This is also a diagonal. So even though they're two completely different media, thematically, they are echoing each other, which helps this page hold together. Another thing that it helps hold together is down here, because pulling this across like this, across the seam, across the binding, now instead of having one page and another page, I have one page, one canvas, and I really like that. Now that we have a background, I'm going to add some focal points and make a collage layout here. As I often do, I'm going to talk a lot about what you will not see in the finished page, about what I didn't use. And that is because it is very, very rare that you can just take a couple of strong images, glue them down, and come out with a successful piece. It just doesn't happen. Instead, what does happen is you spend many hours moving dozens of pieces hundreds of times. That's what you got to do to get a really strong layout. So I'm going to talk about what that looks like a little bit. I knew that I wanted to use these architectural pieces from the Ruskin prints. I also figured that I was going to use some kind of a black and white critter. And I have a lot of them. So let's start with those 2 points. Here's this arch. And I cut away the center shadowy part so that you can see stuff peeking out underneath. Get some layers going on there. Now this looks very, very good. And if this was just one page, I would love it. But it looks so good that it's going to be very difficult to come something that would match that will hold up to that over here for balance. And you need balance on both sides. I tried to get something to hold up to this. I had this in my church box, and he looks okay. I even moved him over here so that he would have some wings. See? That would be pretty whimsical, but it doesn't go. I tried another part of the Ruskin print, and it's too matchy-matchy. Bye. So then I thought, well, one of these bold guys over here. I tried that guy. And you know what? That is not a bad page. I don't hate that. But it's not really talking to me either, so So I decided to move the arch over here. And that's also very good. But now I need something over here for balance. Let's bring this guy back. It's okay, but not great. I have this pangolin. I think it's a pangolin. Anybody want to help me out there? And that's a really, really good image. But he seems to be kind of floating, and I can't quite find a way to ground him in a way that's satisfying. I always like a good corvid. And he could be grounded. He could be sitting right there. But he's looking outward, and that pushes these pages apart rather than draws them together. So he's not going to work. I did have this other blackbird, and I thought about putting him here because that is, his gaze is turning the pages inward. So that's tempting right there. I like the verticalness of that, but I don't know. It's just not quite it. Then I found this guy. Now, he's a little bit small to have the responsibility of anchoring this page, but he also has this great expression, and it's a pretty dramatic and whimsical bird. So, and I like the way he fills this space without too much. His branches that he's sitting on are just hanging out there, but we can draw those in. So there we go. Now, what about the birds? It's not bad as a layout, but I actually feel like they're not acting together. They're not engaging with each other. So I decided to take that away. Then I thought, I do need something bold here. Well, I have a box of critters, I have a box of flowers. And in the box of flowers, I do have some black and white ones that came from old-timey books of photographs of flowers. And so they actually had a lot of black and white. I guess it was cheaper. And I like to find those and keep them because they're dramatic. Now, thought about that. And it is dramatic. And it is cool. And we could put it under like that so it's peeking through the arch. That's tempting. That is very tempting. I don't know, something about the palette was a little bit off. It's a little bit more gray than, I don't know. It just I decided to save it for another day. Then, when in doubt, go to Mr. Marshall's Flower Book. It's a book that I use a lot. I buy them when I can find them cheap, and then I use the images. Usually flowers, but there was also this one of a bunch of grapes. And hey presto, look at this. They're purple-black, just like this. So here's the balance. Strong purple-black over here, strong purple-black over here. I thought about this, and I do like that a lot. It does have the balance. It's pretty. It's fun. But it's also taken up a whole lot of butterfly real estate there that I went to a lot of trouble with. So how about that? That's kind of cool. It's almost like they're bubbles. I like that. But I did decide to go with that. And to me, it almost looks as though it gives it some dimension, because it almost looks as though these are on a vine here in the foreground, and this is some bit of a church or whatnot a couple of miles away. And you're seeing it through this prism. So there we go. That's what I'm going to work with. Now it's time to bring the whole thing home with some embellishment. For this, I'm primarily going to be using a charcoal pencil. See, this one is Conte, and these soft chalk pastels. These are by Daler Rowney, and it's called the Warm Selection. I do not know if they still make the Warm Selection. I've had these for years, and I use them a lot, as you can see. So, I like this autumny palette. While I was gluing stuff down off camera, I decided to add over here another fragment of the Ruskin engraving. Now, it adds some balance and interest, but it's not really integrated into the page. So what I'm going to do about that is take my charcoal pencil and go over here to where these arches are, these rounded carved arches. And I'm going to pull them out from the paper onto my page. And then I'm also going to go back into the page a little bit so that charcoal line goes straight on down. Do that here and here. And I'll be adding a lot more, and I'll come back and show you what we're going to do with that. So, but that's how that effect is going to work, is using the charcoal pencil to extend. I like this. It's a little bit whimsical because you've got this fragment of a paper becoming the page. I'm going to do the same thing over here with this rounded Romanesque arch. And if there's one thing I know about Romanesque arches, and I do, it's that if there's one here, there are going to be more over here, extending out, as they have done here. So I'm going to be drawing in some arches by hand using the charcoal pencil and just pulling those out onto the page. Also, I'm going to give this guy some branches. Well, he's got branches, but I'm going to extend them out and just use one of these brown colors. And I am not really trying to make it look realistic. I like that it's stylized. It's meant to be two things becoming one thing, but staying two things. So be also going over here and extending this branch as well. So you see how that's going to work. I'm going to go do it by hand and come back. Now I'm trying to balance showing how to do the technique without making you watch me make every little stroke and whatnot, because you don't have time for that. Instead, if I have done something and you're not sure, please let me know in the questions and I'll try to flesh that out a little bit. So over here, I have just drawn using my charcoal pencil, and I've pulled the arches from the fragment and made them part of the page. One of the things that I love about charcoal is how it smudges. So it goes from being this stark outline. You can pull it out into the page a little bit. As always, you can use a blending tool. I can never find mine. So there we go. Over here, I am going to do the same. I've pulled the charcoal into the page itself and then down into the gessoed background. And you can see that as I blend it, it becomes so much more messy and forgiving. And it starts to have that quality of the old stone, and it also pulls the whole image back into the page. Now over here, I've added some branches for this guy, and I am going to just smudge those. Okay. Which already looks really pretty. Like I said, I don't care if it looks realistic. But now look what I'm going to do. I am going to take my brush and some water. And you can, if you get soft chalk pastels wet, they actually will work slightly, a little bit like a water soluble. And you can pick up the color and move it around. I have a whole video just on using soft pastels as a water soluble, and I will put the link to that in the text below this video. So this is going to soften it up, but it's also going to let me pick up the color and pull it out. So we're going to add a few more mysterious branches here. So just going to pull the color out like that. Over here, I want to add a little bit of color and depth to these arches. So I have a purple chalk pastel, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of that. I'm just going to go around the edge of the arch very imperfectly. So I've got the purple, and then I'm also going to add this sort of terracotta color, which is in some of the grapes, so that it's not just monochromatic, just purple. Okay, so just got a little bit of highlights there. Now, when I smudge that in, pulling it out, not staying all perfect in the lines. And that's given a little bit more mystery to our arches. And again, I'm going to take my brush with some water and pull that color out a little bit like this. Not thinking about it. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. And we'll soften that a little bit. Pull that color out, down and around. Finally, I'm going to add a little bit of mark making using some handmade walnut ink. I have a little teacup here, a little Japanese teacup, and I'm just going to add a little tiny bit of some mess there that's picking up the color of the branches a little bit. Yeah, that's good. I will probably work on this some more, maybe for a couple of weeks, because I like it. And I never feel like they're quite finished. But we'll leave it here. Let's see, my newsletter, again, is coming out on Sunday. So please subscribe to that. The link is in the text below this video. I will have the free scans. I will also have a fall shop restock update. If you have any questions or feedback, please let me know. It really, really helps me to plan the direction of the videos and the channel to what you are curious about. So let me hear from you, please. Until next week, happy making.